So today, for the purpose of this video, I would like to give a few ideas or recommendations for how I think Falke should be updated to be a bit stronger. So I don't think Falke is really that weak right now to begin with. However, there are still some glaring problems that I think need to be addressed, and I don't think that she's strong by any means. I think that she's still a pretty weak character, just not as weak as a lot of people have been saying. So, among my wide list of potential recommendations or options to change things, I'll try to explain every single one of my suggestions and why I think it should be implemented, but I'll try to segment this video into, at first I'll talk about changes that I think absolutely should be made and need to be made. Then I'll talk about changes that could be made to potentially make the character stronger. And lastly, I'll talk about weirder possible additions that could be made to the character. So, first off, I would like to talk about Standing Light Punch, Light Kick, Kugel, and Medium Kick. So, Falke right now, her Standing Light Kick is +3 on block and +4 on hit, which allows her to counter hit confirm into her Standing Medium Punch. This is the only light normal that she can do this from. And her Standing Medium Punch is her fastest medium button. None of her other light buttons have enough hit stun to cancel into her bigger combos, such as this kick and the EX kick. Even on counter hit, Standing Light Kick will only link into the regular catapult, but not the EX catapult. So you can only really do that from the medium buttons, which is why comboing into them is important. But the only button that you can do that from is Standing Light Kick. Whereas Standing Light Punch and Crouching Light Punch basically have the same purpose. Crouching Light Punch is pretty much just better in every single facet. Standing Light Punch doesn't really have a point to it, as it is right now. Standing Light Punch is, as all of the other lights except for Standing Light Kick are, +2 on block and +3 on hit. So the change that I'm suggesting is that not only is Standing Light Kick the best move on block in terms of her lights, because it's the only one that will actually counter hit convert into the Standing Medium Punch, it's also one of her best pokes in neutral, way better than any of her jabs that won't reach anywhere near as far. She can constantly poke with Light Kick into Kugel. So I'm suggesting that the changes to Light Kick should be leave it at 5-frame startup as it is, but make it +5 on hit and +1 on block. So increase its hit stun by 1 frame and decrease its block stun by 2 frames. That sounds like a nerf on the block stun, but it actually would not be, because as it stands right now, the reason why I think its hit stun should be increased by 1 frame is so that at max range, the Kugel does not combo, as it currently is, which can be a problem if you are in, say, V-Trigger 2, and you need to confirm a hit into activation. They might get hit by the Light Kick, but then be able to recover and block the Kugel afterwards, and then you would be performing your activation on block. And the same goes for once you're in activation. If that doesn't cleanly combo, you won't be able to properly hit confirm it. And they'll be able to block after the Light Kick. So I think that if it had 1 frame more hit stun, it would be able to combo at every single range that it was guaranteed to hit at. And if it had 2 frames less block stun, it wouldn't be as suitable of a tool to use on the opponent's wake up, or to pressure the opponent. It already has worse push block than the light punch. The light punches. So I think that it should not be used on meaty situations to counter hit confirm into standing medium punch. I think that should be the light punch's job, because right now the light punch doesn't really do anything that the crouching light punch can't do slightly better, and the standing light kick can't do better. So I'm suggesting that standing light punch... Oh, another thing about the block stun change is that, once again, only at max range is this possible. But when the opponent blocks the light kick at max range, it will create a frame trap into Kugel. However, in any other position, it doesn't create a frame trap, it's a true block string. This is bad because it means that you can't even possibly check the opponent afterwards, because they have no fear of getting hit by the Kugel because they know it's a true block string. There's no possible way that they could get hit by that if they block the light kick, so there's no reason for them to not try to challenge afterwards. So if it was made 2 frames worse on block, it would be able to create a frame trap at every range. And changing standing light punch to be +3 on block and +4 on hit would give standing light punch an actual purpose, because it would allow it to counter hit confirm into standing medium punch. Next, the final addition to this set of changes, I would like standing medium kick, its startup to be reduced from 8 frames to 6 frames. Now the reason for that change not only is Falke lacks a lot of decent pokes other than standing light kick, because standing hard punch and crouching medium punch aren't actually that viable of pokes. They can be done easily if you're within the range that they will hit, because they have much better personal hurt boxes on the startup of the attacks than after they have whiffed, in which case they are highly whiff punishable, so they are much more dangerous to use at this range than they are at this range. In which case they will usually beat out other attacks and not get interrupted, rather than easily getting whiff punished at this range or farther. But those still aren't pokes, because you need to be within complete range to be able to actually do these safely. Otherwise, they're massive risks that don't necessarily yield very good reward. And the only other poke is a light button that can only be done in a certain range. And the actual raw Kugel, which is easily interrupted by low attacks and is a projectile that can be jumped in on. So I think that speeding this up could make it an actual viable poke at this range. However, that is not the main reason that I suggest that standing medium kick startup be reduced to 6 frames. So currently, between the range that standing medium punch will actually connect to the opponent and about like the max range of standing hard punch, there is nothing that Falke has to, if she's walking from this range forwards, there is absolutely nothing that she has to stop the opponent from pressing buttons. Unless she does an early, like, medium kick or something like that, and just hit confirms that, but she can't do it without doing a button that's either minus, or just doing light kick into Kugel. So, between that range and the range where she can actually start, like, pressuring with a medium punch, she has no way to actually counter-hit confirm anything if she hits the opponent on the startup of a jab when they're trying to defend. Because even if she's walking in from that range, if she gets like a counter-hit light punch, she's either still not in range for the light kick afterwards, or she is, but it won't, the light kick is still at max range and it's too far to combo. Which, given the other changes I mentioned, wouldn't be a problem anymore, but still, when she's walking in from this range, there's no danger that the opponent has really to challenge, other than getting beaten out by an 8-frame startup move that is -2 on block, or a 10-frame startup move that's -3 on block. So because of that, I think that she should be able to counter-hit confirm standing light punch into standing medium kick. I think that should combo. So with the changes I already listed to standing light punch, it should already combo into standing medium punch. But if you're not at a range where you can link medium punch, or even pressure with medium punch, you should be able to poke and interrupt the opponent from trying to challenge your pressure, and be able to get something off of that, like almost every other character in the cast can do. Currently, the only way that she has to actually legitimately pressure while advancing is in V-Trigger 1, where she can do a jab into V-Skill, which will combo on hit, and then she can cancel it into the gunshots to make it plus on block. So she can walk forward and do medium kick into that, but that's only when she's in V-Trigger 1. So I think that it just makes sense to allow her to be able to counter-hit confirm that into that, while at the same time speeding that up to make it a better poke. The next change that I would like to see implemented is an increase on the active frames of the Kugel. So, some changes to its like hitbox maybe I could take. I don't think it really needs an increase on its range. It's fine where it is as a poke. However, maybe increase like the upwards hitbox so that it beats out people in jump startup or starting to jump over it a little bit better. And just sort of stops movement at that range. But the biggest problem with this is that you constantly have to use this to poke, especially off of lights. Like, you poke with light kick and then you cancel it into Kugel, and that's where you get a lot of your damage from in your poking game. However, if you accidentally, by means that you cannot possibly foresee in the situation, happen to hit your opponent out of the air, such as in jump startup, a move that puts you in, that makes the opponent airborne, or a backdash, the Kugel will completely whiff, and if the opponent presses a button, it will outright punish Falke on the recovery. I think that Kugel should have enough active frames so that that isn't a problem anymore. This would also give the possibility of allowing new tech and options for certain situations, like possibly making that be plus on block if it hits a delayed active frame in that situation. And but mainly, I just think that it should be a quality of life change, that she should not have to worry about accidentally hitting the opponent out of something that happened to be airborne while poking. While doing a very non-committal light kick into projectile, she shouldn't be punished really hard for accidentally hitting them out of like Ibuki's forward hard kick or anything like that. Next, I want to suggest a slight expansion of the backwards hitbox of the Schneide anti-air. Currently, it'll only hit it about there or farther away, and it won't work at about that range. Neither will the crouching heavy punch, although the crouching heavy punch does strangely hit farther backwards than the Schneide in a lot of situations. However, the EX Schneide has an additional hit. The regular Schneide only hits 2 times, and the EX Schneide hits 3 times. And this additional hit happens to have a much better hitbox that will hit the opponent out of the air slightly further back than the regular sniper would. Like so. So I would suggest a slight change in that hitbox to make it anti-air a little better when the opponent's about that close. I don't think she needs to necessarily be able to anti-air cross-ups. She does have an air throw for close jump-in situations. However, you can't rely on air-to-airs every single time. There could potentially be some changes to Falke's walk speed and general dash speed and damage output, but I'm not really specifically focused on on number crunching exactly what those changes should be, but those are an option. I don't necessarily think she needs a walk speed increase or anything to improve her pressure. Like I said, something that's far more important for her to be able to pressure like a normal character or be able to walk in to get to throw range is the changes I mentioned to light punch and medium kick. That's far more important. Being able to actually have something that will stop the opponent when you're outside the range of standing medium punch is far more important than walking faster. Because even if she walks faster, she still won't be able to check the opponent at that range. Next, I want to talk about the V skill. So, as it currently works, the V skill can nullify projectiles, although it does this quite poorly. Even if you react to a projectile being on screen, the startup of the move is quite bad, and she moves quite forwards when she does the attack, so by the time that you can see a fireball coming at about this range even, it's too late. The V scale itself doesn't build anything. It doesn't build V gauge, it doesn't even build regular meter. And the only actual, even foreseeable benefit of using this to nullify a projectile, as it currently is, would be to knock down an opponent that's following a slower projectile. However, even when used in this situation, the V skill still hits very weird because it hits on a late active frame. If it hits on one of its later active frames, it causes a very strange knockdown. It's still not a very beneficial move to use. It's punishable on block, so they can just simply block this. It doesn't have a particularly big hitbox, so it probably won't hit the opponent unless they dash straight into it. It's easy to whiff punish as well. It's whiffing for a long time. And it can be jumped in on. Compare that move to Zangief's Headbutt, which not only builds lots of meter when nullifying projectiles, it also is already a really good button to use in neutral in general, and is plus on block, and leads to a combo on hit if the opponent dashes into it, which allows him to get standing light kick into lariat. Now, I don't think that Falke's V-skill necessarily needs to be as good as Zangief's Headbutt, but I would still like it to actually have, like, a foreseeable purpose to nullifying projectiles, which it is something that it's supposed to be able to do, but it so poorly and yields so little reward. The only reward it could possibly have is in an extremely specific situation, and it has far more downsides to actually nullifying projectiles with this move than benefits, since it doesn't build you any V gauge, it doesn't build you any meter, it's easy to punish on block, it's easy to punish on whiff, and it's hard to get out before the projectile interrupts the startup. So I would suggest that this builds V gauge for nullifying projectiles, has a slightly farther forward hitbox, moves forward faster and farther so that it would better interrupt people following behind their projectiles, which it does not do very well as it is currently, and a faster startup so that it is easier to react to and stop fireballs before they interrupt it. Similarly, with the same change about having it move farther forwards, I would like Standing Light Punch to always be able to link into the V skill at any range. It doesn't need to. The Kugel is the one that's meant for the far-reaching light attacks, like the light kick. I think that the Light Punch should be able to link into V skill at about this range. And lastly, for the changes that I feel are important and necessary, I believe that Crouching Medium Kick should be special cancelable. Or Crouching Medium Punch, it doesn't matter, but I feel it makes more sense for Crouching Medium Kick to be special cancelable. Or, I think that's a fairer buff. It would be quite strong if Crouching Medium Punch was special cancelable, but in any case, she needs a Crouching Normal that is special cancelable, that she can actually use to whiff punish attacks. There are attacks from many characters that can be ducked that Falke has a lot of trouble dealing with, simply because even though you can duck them cleanly and most characters can easily punish them, Falke has a sweep that has absolutely no range and almost no purpose whatsoever, and multiple Crouching Normals that either won't reach in Footsie's range or can't be special cancelled outside of V-Trigger. These aren't the only examples, however. There are plenty of moves in the game that are simply better suited to be beaten out by low attacks, such as the startup of fireballs, which generally pull back the body hurt box and move forward the low hurt box, so that they are better interrupted by lows. So having Falke not be able to actually properly convert into anything off of that type of normal that's used for beating out those types of attacks is kind of a big problem for her in some situations, where there are certain moves or buttons that she just has a really hard time dealing with, because the only buttons that are actually designed to beat them well, she can't get anything off of. In addition, it would be very beneficial for her to have a low that is special cancelable, checking the opponent for walking backwards and getting a knockdown, although she can already stop the opponent from walking out of tick throws and such by using the down forward hard kick, which has proximity block if they try to walk backwards, preventing them from getting any further away during the actual animation startup, and it's very easy to combo off of and immediately hit confirm into a combo. That being said, she still has trouble having she doesn't have a low that is actually any fast that will lead to anything outside of point-blank range. It would be beneficial for her to have a low attack that would be capable of beating those moves that expand the hurt box at the ankles, and for her to be able to hit with a low that is special cancelable, and allow her to do things like hit low into the Kugel fireball and other things like that. So those are all the changes that I feel should be made to Falke to make her fine, to fix all the problems. Anything else that I mention after this point is just an optional buff.
I'm ready to start.
But I feel like if those changes were made, the character would be completely fine, and I wouldn't have, like, any complaints. Now, a lot of these other increased buffs that I'm going to talk about are either optional or made to find ways of getting more use from moves that I feel are quite useless, as they currently are. One change that's optional that I would prefer to see is Kugel is only +1 on hit. I understand somewhat the point of this, because I don't think that she needs to be able to combo off of Kugel outside of activating into V-Trigger. That being said, when she lands this as a poke, and then you're basically back to neutral with no frame advantage whatsoever to be the first one to press your button afterwards, kind of sucks. I think it should be at the very least +3 on hit. Forward hard punch is a you know, it's a pretty good move. I mean, it is heavily whiff punishable, but so long as you're properly spacing it, it's fine. However, unlike Minot's standing hard punch, this is universally -10 on block at every single range. So Minot's normals are pretty bad on block. However, so see, they're standing hard punch is -7 here, but the farther away you are, the later the orb will actually hit, making it, like, say, only -1 at this far out. The same is true of Minot's medium punch, which is -11 on block. Very bad. However, the farther out you are, it can be just, say, -6 or -7. So at different ranges, some characters can easily punish this move on block while others cannot. But only at certain ranges. So if you're in this range and you block it, you won't be able to get an exact punish, but if you're slightly closer, the frame advantage you have will be better, and you'll be able to punish it with the X legs. However, at every single range, as I already said, this will be -10 on block. Now, at some ranges, it hits farther, so it won't necessarily be within range to be punished by EX legs. Although most characters can often just find other punishes due to how bad it is on block, no matter what range they're at. And Cammy can pretty much spiral arrow this from any range after it's blocked. So because of that, some characters, there's no way to properly space it out to get a better frame advantage. And a lot of characters can easily completely shut this button down. In addition to that, the move is also very whiff punishable. I don't think this needs to change. I don't think her staff normals need to have their hurt boxes pulled backwards. The benefit of these normals is that, especially with standing hard punch, the personal hurt box doesn't move forwards until the attack is already completed. So, when you're in this range, it's easy to beat out other attacks, so long as you're within the range that the hard punch will actually hit. As you can see, I can't be stuffed by Ryu's crouching medium punch even though I'm within range, because it doesn't move the hurt box forward like it would for that, which would get stuffed. So long as you're not using this as a buffer and getting whiff punished all the time, and you're using it within range, it should be fine. So I don't think those moves need to change. But this move is not only very whiff punishable on whiff and terrible on block, outright punishable by some characters at every single range, it's also easily stuffed itself on startup for some reason, even though it's a heavy crush counter button. So because of that, I would like to see the personal hurt box not expanded to the range that it's at on whiff until after the attack already comes out, and I would like to see it the block stun change based on how far away you are when the opponent actually blocks the move, or just reduce the block stun so that it's not outright punishable by spiral arrow at every single range, or just increase the startup of the move so that it will beat out other buttons rather than getting stuffed. Next, I want to, in keeping in line with that, I also want to talk about a change for Falke's standing hard punch. So I said that this move has a very good personal hurt box on the startup of the move, but that's not entirely accurate. There's actually something very strange about this move. See, this attack, the hurt box is pretty much at the staff during the entire animation, and Falke's body. So Falke's body sort of moves backwards when the attack actually starts out, which is why it isn't stuffed by mids or lows in that range. However, the staff has its own personal hurt box that can be hit after the whiff, as I already discussed, but the staff also has a hurt box as it's coming down. For some reason, this move, because its hurt box is along the staff as it's coming down, it will often get stuffed by moves that are not meant to be neutral tools at all, that are meant as anti-airs. Anything that hits pretty high up into the air will often randomly just stuff this attack on startup, even if it's a mile away. Needless to say, I would like to see that change so that it has a pulled back personal hurt box on startup, but you can leave the hurt box on whiff exactly the same. I don't have a problem with that. In addition, I would also like to see the sweep have its range increased. Either its range, its outright range increased, or have her slide farther forwards when she does the sweep. Because right now this move is pretty useless. It doesn't go anywhere near as far forwards as her other normals. It provides a much worse knockdown in terms of whiff punishes. Everything else that she has hits farther and yields better results. So I would like to see an increase in the range of this, possibly to the point where it can be easier to possibly increase its range so far that it will be farther than standing hard punch, ideally, making it actually have a point, and so that it will allow you to get a knockdown off of a long-range jumping medium punch. Which currently, she doesn't really have anything that will link into it. The closest thing she can get is a crouching medium punch. I don't necessarily think that she needs to be able to get a knockdown off of a max range jumping medium punch. I would actually be fine with just increasing the range of crouching medium punch slightly. I understand that this is already one of her farthest reaching pokes, but that being said, it's only barely farther than standing hard punch. Sorry, I didn't mean, this isn't a poke, because this isn't something that you can whiff safely. But, when you're within this range, you can, check the opponent with it. But, it serves basically the same function as the standing hard punch, but it's not special cancelable, it's slower on startup, it's still really bad on whiff, and it's only just barely farther than the standing hard punch, not at a range where it'll actually matter. So if that button's range were to increase a little bit more, it would be a better check at about this range, and she wouldn't just have to rely on using Kugel all the time in this range. And she could get a little bit of extra damage off of a jumping medium punch at far range, even if she shouldn't be allowed to get a knockdown afterwards. Now next, I want to talk about the Kenonen and the Feder. So, the one is significantly more useless than the other, but I'll get to that. The Kenonen is a decent move for one thing, and that's getting extended corner combos. Two things. Getting extended corner combos and comboing into trigger. Other than that, all it does is go underneath projectiles. It's not a zoning tool. I don't think it should be a zoning tool. Falke isn't a zoning character. But it's not something that will zone the opponent as a long startup. It's easy to jump in on. It doesn't really shrink her own personal hurt box. Even though it looks like she's crouching, her hurt box is still pretty much in the same place that it would be if she was just crouching. So it's still really easy to punish by jumping in on. It's a very fast projectile. It does almost no damage. And but most importantly, it just like there's no point to doing this. Because, like, the reward is, there's no even potential, it's a big risk, because it's very easy to punish, just by a random jump in, but it's also yields no reward even in the situations where you would want to do this, like to duck under an opponent's projectile and shoot your own instead. Not only does it do almost no damage, it doesn't provide, like, hardly any frame advantage either. Like, it's not even plus enough to get, like, a forward dash and still have plus frames in that situation. Especially not on block. So I think that there's a few ways that this could be improved to not be, like just, a massive, just a terrible move in terms of risk-reward, because it doesn't really get you anything at all if you happen to hit with it. So I think that either some of these suggestions are more outlandish than others. The weirdest one I probably have would be that it would cause a knockdown on counter hit, but there's no other special moves in the game that really act as though they were crush counters, so that's not one that I see being strongly implemented. Another option is to drastically increase the frame advantage on hit and on block, which is something that I think should happen anyways. After all, the move itself has a very slow startup. The best thing that you can do into it is either standing hard punch or down forward hard kick, which can be cancelled into it, and even those can be beaten out by 3-frame normals. I think it should be beaten out by 4-frame normals as well, so make the activation, the startup 1 or 2 frames slower for this move, and like make the recovery of the move after it shoots like 2 or 3 frames better after that, and make the move actually plus on block at close range rather than -3. Because it's very easy to interrupt this move, especially off of, like, say, standing hard punch, which is already -3 anyways, and she doesn't have any other specials that really create frame traps with it, or that would be plus on block, or even safe on block. So the opponent really has, even if this was plus on block, the opponent would really have no reason to not challenge in this situation, and you might just be able to sneak it in certain places if the opponent is respecting your pressure, but it would still be interruptible if cancelled from special moves. So I think that if it was plus on block in those situations, it would be completely fine, and significantly more plus on hit, like 4 frames better on hit. With that, it would allow you to actually link into some certain stuff if you were able to catch them from far range. If you were to hit them, like duck underneath Sonic Boom and hit Guile on the ankles, it would actually give you some advantage rather than practically nothing at all. Like, it would put him in enough hit stun so that you would be able to move forward slightly, or potentially... one thing I would like to see is being able to combo the Canonen into the Panzer. If you get the hit with this, I think you should be able to combo into the knockdown with that. Similarly, in speaking about the Panzer is significantly worse on block than the Canonen. It's -6, whereas the Canonen is -3. I think that's fine. In fact, I think it should be worse. I think the Panzer should be really bad on block to make up for the fact that it actually grants a knockdown at any range, and I think it should be better on startup, so that you might just catch people and knock them down, allowing you to move in. And additionally making it easier to do what I suggested, which is allow you to combo off of that from far away. Allowing you to get a knockdown off of your cannon hit, and actually have it produce something beneficial rather than just 60 damage. Because right now, like I said, its only real benefit that you can justify using it is doing those combos or going into V-trigger. Or just taking the 60 damage that you get from happening to hit the opponent's ankles or ducking underneath the fireball. And even then, it's a bigger risk than it would ever be on reward. So, next, I want to talk about the Fetter, which is even worse as a move. So, to really explain how bad the Fetter is as a move, first I need to demonstrate that it is most certainly not a zoning tool, because it is the easiest thing to punish in the world. At almost any range, anyone with even a halfway decent jump in can just on reaction jump over it and get a full jump in punish on this move. In addition, if you happen to be moving forwards really at all, or otherwise dashing forwards, you can punish her that way as well, just like Akuma with his air fireball. And that is a legitimate punish. I have the opponent blocking as soon as they land, so even characters like Abigail can easily get around this move. So that's fine, like I said, Falke isn't a zoning character, she'll never be a zoning character, and Fetter will never really be a zoning tool. However, the move has essentially no purpose. The Fetter is totally useless. And now I will demonstrate other potential uses that it could have, but it still doesn't. So even in a situation where you can use the Fetter to bait out an anti-air because it stops your forward momentum during a jump-in, like so, Falke will still land to the ground straight down and be minus. As you can see, she's the one glowing red in that situation. She is at a frame disadvantage even after using that attack, and the attack still, as the other projectile, only does 60 damage. So you're not getting any frame advantage whatsoever on block, on hit, on successful bait of an anti-air. And it can only bait anti-airs that won't just outright beat it out anyways, like uppercuts. Cammy's uppercut will beat out a regular jump-in or the Fetter. And it provides her no frame advantage. In fact, it's worse. It's worse on hit for her than it is for her opponent. And it does no damage. It does practically no damage. The move is essentially useless. It's a massive risk for absolutely no benefit. So my solutions to this problem would be, once again, but this time, much more so in this case, drastically increase the frame advantage on hit and on block. You can leave it exactly the same on whiff, make it just as punishable as it already is if it doesn't actually hit the opponent. So that way you can still use it to catch the opponent trying to chase you down by hitting them in the face as they chase you, or using it as sort of like an instant air fireball, like a much inferior version of Akuma's instant air EX air fireball, hitting sort of like a dive kick on a forward jump, like so, but drastically increase the advantage on hit, or at least decrease the disadvantage on block, especially if you're aiming towards the opponent's ankles, which only makes it riskier for you, since the opponent can easily jump over the projectile and punish you. Just increase the frame advantage on hit so that you can potentially combo off of it or get some benefit. Because, like, there's no benefit to baiting out anti-airs or happening to poke with this as it is right now. As it is right now, this move is just... It's just awful. It's just terrible. It's bad at absolutely everything. The only potential use that this move can have is when you're way back here trying to get in on a zoning character. You can use this to go underneath the projectiles. Once again, this won't net you anything, but it will still hit the opponent, potentially, and it's not that unsafe to do from this far away. And use this to change your forward jump so that you don't go into the range of an opponent's anti-airs. So you can use this to do like half of the forward distance of a forward jump to go over projectiles that another zoning character, or not another zoning character, a zoning character like Guile, an actual zoning character, would be able to accomplish. So you could be able to go over his fireballs and but avoid getting anti-aired by, say, like his back knuckle or something, or one of his longer ranged anti-airs. And be able to stuff that, like bait out that anti-air and move slightly closer forward. That's the only use that this move has as of right now, other than just being a 60 damage, like, dive kick-esque poke from, like, here. And sometimes catching people running into it, or like catching dive kicks or things, once again for a whole whopping 60 damage. And a disadvantage on hit. Finally, I want to talk about the V-triggers. So, in general, I think V-trigger 1 is a lot stronger than V-trigger 2. It gives you a lot more options, and it has a lot fewer drawbacks. But one thing that I would like to see changed is Falke has a legitimate 50-50 off of a jumping light punch between a throw, a tick throw that she can do off of jumping light punch, which she can land off of certain safe jump setups, and jumping light punch into the Jaeger. Because the Jaeger startup, the Jaeger can be beaten out. Like if I was to set Ryu to interrupt it, yeah, do a 3-frame jab, it would still beat this out. That being said, it wouldn't beat out the throw, so they would still have to guess. If you're forcing them to guess to actually have to tech the throw every single time, then that wouldn't matter. And I've tested this out. It most certainly works. They have to, if they try to tech or late tech the throw, they will get caught by the Jaeger as a trap, and they will get counter hit or whiff punished for the throw, and you can combo off of it. So that's a legitimate 50-50 that she gets off of a jumping light punch. However, jumping light punch doesn't hit crouching opponents. Now, this is fine, per se. It doesn't really need to change, because if you're jumping in or off of your safe jump setups, say you're doing like a safe jump setup, like just one of her normal safe jump setups, like so. If you're doing the jumping hard punch, like pretty much every single time, it's fine, because the jumping hard punch will most certainly hit crouching opponents and force them to stand block, which will allow you to get away with doing crouching light punch sometimes, which will allow you to set up that 50-50, so long as you're doing jumping hard punch the majority of the time. That being said, I would still like to see jumping light punch hit crouching opponents. But beyond that, I think that V-Trigger 1 is already quite strong, and would be made stronger by some of these changes, such as increasing standing medium kick startup, or decreasing standing medium kick startup to 6 frames, and extending the forward range of the V-skill, which would allow you to pressure with V-skill cancellations, because the V-skill moves you forwards anyways, especially off of standing medium kick. which you can constantly cancel into the Shrot to be +4 on block. Even though the closest you can possibly get with this in mid-screen is still not close enough to do a standing medium punch afterwards, to check the opponent, with the changes to the standing light punch, if it was able to counter-hit confirm into standing medium kick, that'd be fine. And then you would have more free reign to walk forwards and then start pressuring, like catching later jabs and counter hits with the standing medium punch, or actually walking forward and going for throws. And in the corner, this is excellent because the Shrot, due to the fact that it is a projectile, only has pushback on the character it's hitting rather than Falke, so canceling the V skill into the Shrot doesn't really have any pushback anymore, which means that you're much closer. So if you do it from about this range, you're always within range for a throw. In addition, the V3.5 also has the Jaeger, which is a really good dive kick-esque move that can be used right now, that you can combo on hit and still have frame advantage on block. And it's really good for a max range jumping medium punch to get the proper angle for the ricochet shot, which will be significantly better on block, allowing you to get a forward dash into plus frames even from a max range jumping medium punch. And it allows you to, not only does this drastically increase your combo damage, especially in the corner, and drastically increase your stun output, it also allows you to get knockdowns off of all of your pokes and such as your forward hard punch and crouching medium punch. You can get knockdowns with the Panzer. Honestly, I think that this V-trigger is very strong, and once again, I think that the Panzer should be significantly worse on block, so that you have to actually hit confirm it as a nerf to this. Because I think that all the other changes will just naturally lead to this V-trigger being buffed anyways, and I don't think it needs to be buffed because it's already quite strong. It has a lot of tools. So, but yeah, this allows you to get knockdowns with the Panzer. But it also, in addition to, and the activation in and of itself, allows you to get plus frames with the cancellation from the V skill as well, +3, and it doesn't have the push block the projectiles have. And in addition to that, it also allows her to get much better knockdowns, whereas like previously the best knockdowns that she could get were, say, she doesn't get a... I covered, in another video I covered all of Falke's Oki options, but she doesn't necessarily get like a Oki in all these situations, especially not after the back recover. Most of the time she can only meaty the back recover with a forward hard punch or a Kugel. Even off of that, which is probably her best Oki option knockdown, other than just leaving the EX catapults without doing any follow-up whatsoever. But the V3.5 allows you to get follow-ups with the V skill into Shrot, which allows you to get 2 forward dashes into legitimate Oki, no matter if the opponent quick rises or back recovers, which you can also do off of the EX catapult. So it gives you legitimate Oki, it gives you really good pressure tools that allows you to continue to like loop this chain on lock. In the corner it becomes even more vicious. She gets like a pseudo throw loop with the... so long as you time it right. And she of course gets the Jaeger and buttons into the Jaeger. And she gets the 50-50 between the jumping light punch throw and the jumping light punch Jaeger. And she gets the ability to get those knockdowns like I was talking about. So this V-trigger is already really quite good. In addition to its just like absurd damage and stun output. And because you only get 3 shots with it, and you can choose how quickly you want to spend those shots, you can just blow them all doing extra damage in your combos. And very quickly spend the bullets so that you can empty your V gauge and possibly have the room left or health left to get a second V-Trigger 1 by the end of the round. So I think that the V-Trigger 1 is very strong. Comparatively, V-Trigger 2 has much more drawbacks. Not only is it a 3-bar V-Trigger, but it does a punishable move on activation. Minus 42. I think this is completely fine, but I think that the V-Trigger itself should have enough strengths to justify all of its drawbacks, which I do not feel that it does. Now, this V-Trigger comparatively, what it does is it allows you to cancel your specials into these additional moves. However, combos like that, like the catapult into Sturm, does not give you legitimate Oki off of, like, say, the back recover, like the V-skill into Schrottwood for V-Trigger 1. You do get better Oki for V-skill into Schneide than you would off of regular Schneide, per se, but really the only way to actually get guaranteed Oki off of a knockdown in this V-Trigger in mid-screen is if you just do anything into Schneide and then cancel that into the Sturm without it hitting, and then forward dash, and that will leave you point blank in front of the opponent, no matter if they quick rise or back recover. So that's the only way for you to get legitimate Oki, like throw Oki afterwards, is to do a normal combo and then spend some of the V-Trigger to not even get any more damage or stun and just whiff an attack to get slightly closer. All of her other options leave her farther away from the opponent. Or at a situation where if the opponent back recovers, you won't get actual threatening Oki afterwards. In addition, you basically get these 2 moves. So, another tool that you can get in this is additional knockdown. So not only can you get, say, you can get knockdowns off of that, so if you poke with light kick and do the Kugel, you can hit confirm that and go into the Sturm, but you can also buffer light kick into Sturm all over the place, and if it tags a move, it will get a knockdown. However, those are very strong moves, like abilities. However, remember that once again, the knockdown you're getting off of the Sturm is not legitimate Oki, especially not at those ranges. And especially not if the opponent back recovers. You also get this overhead, which is very slow and is easy to react to, at least to block it. So it doesn't really work as an overhead low mix-up, and it allows you to special cancel the low-medium kick, which is fine, but once again, this isn't something that you can get legitimate Oki off of if the opponent back recovers. Not only is this It's kind of useless as an overhead. I mean, it'll catch some people, I guess, if they're pretty slow at reacting to it, although the movement itself is very obvious since it goes into the air. Sort of like Urian's standing hard kick fully charged, and even that still catches some people, but I don't see many people getting hit by this overhead unless they don't know it's an overhead. But it is a very viable throw bait on the opponent's wake up. That being said, you need to be on top of the opponent during their wake up to do something like that. Now, in the corner, this is fine, because you get Oki off of anything regardless. And in my Oki video, I covered how you can like get double meaties and cover all the different wake-up options and stuff in the corner. But, and it also allows you, this V-trigger also allows you to get knockdowns off of some of the same conversions, such as forward hard punch and crouching medium punch. That being said, the knockdowns are significantly worse than getting the Panzer with the V-trigger 1. Now, in addition, there aren't that many setups. This doesn't go... I mean, it goes pretty far forward as, like, an overhead slash, which is what it is. But in terms of actual pressure, this is also a move that's plus on block, which is useful because V-trigger 1 has moves that are plus on block. Like, you can constantly cancel medium kick into B-skill in V-trigger 1, and B plus on block by canceling that into the plus on block Shrot with the V-trigger 1. But you don't really get the option. This still has an option that is plus on block, however, it's not as plus on block. It will leave you, generally leave you much farther away from the opponent. Not really close enough to threaten with much of anything, especially if cancelled from various actions. And anything that you can cancel into this is interruptible. I've tested it all. Anything that you can cancel into the Kling A is completely interruptible and anti-airable. And even if you were to do punishable actions like this, like say you wanted to get in, like Ed can do his charged Fierce Punch, the Psycho Knuckle, and then he can cancel that into the enhanced Psycho Snatcher in his V-trigger too, and be plus on block. That's legitimate, but Falke can just like kick in with this and then cancel it into the Kling A to be plus on block. However, still interruptible, so you can still just do a move that would punish this, the catapult on block, and would still hit high enough to knock that out of the air. And it doesn't have a particularly great hurt box during this move either. So this move doesn't have, this V-trigger doesn't have that many really strong strengths, especially since the medium kick into V-skill into Shrot is actually legitimate. Whereas anything that you could possibly do into this V-trigger's plus on block move is not legitimate unless the opponent isn't reacting to it. And you can only ever really cancel it into the one thing. You can only cancel it into that, so it's not like they have anything else to be looking for when you do these moves. Because even if you do, say, like, even if you do stay standing heavy punch into Canonen into Sturm, that's a true block string. Catapult into Sturm, that's a true block string. They have no fear of pressing buttons against those moves because they won't be caught with counter hits because they're not frame traps. They're true block strings. So the opponent has absolutely no reason to not challenge the Kling A in those situations. So because of that, I feel that the V-trigger 2 should have some buffs to put it in line with the options that you get in V-trigger 1. Options that I would suggest adding, generally I think that the V-trigger 2 should just be given more uses. And so I suggest 3 changes basically. I think that the V-trigger 1 should be given more uses than what it currently gets. 1 or 2 more uses. I suggest loosening the juggle count on the enhanced V skill so that you can get EX catapult into V skill into stuff like Schneide, or so that you can get V skill into EX catapult into whatever. That would allow you to get bigger combos. And then you would be able to cancel that into the Sturm to get the better knockdown and corner carry without having to necessarily give up much of anything else. I don't necessarily think that she needs to be able to do, like, needs to be able to have really good tools of getting in, like tools as good as like being able to do that into Klinge and having it being a legitimate option. Because that would be quite strong. Just randomly doing the catapult into a move that's plus on block and an overhead. So I don't necessarily feel that she needs to be able to do that. However, one thing is that I think that she should be able to cancel these specials into the V skill, and that the enhanced V skill, it's already better on block than the regular V skill. The regular V skill is -10, and the V-Trigger 2 enhanced V skill is -6. I feel that the enhanced V skill, I don't think it should be plus on block, but I think it should be at least like -2 or something, and that you should be able to cancel these moves into it, making them frame traps. So say catapult into V skill, you could keep it safe on block and have that be a frame trap, or catapult into Klinge. Additionally, maybe not in like putting these two buffs together, but I think that she should be able to cancel EX Schneide into the Klinge, just like she can cancel regular Schneide into the Klinge to get more damage off of it. I don't really think she needs to be able to do this on block though, since it is like the EX reversal. Akuma can't do it on block, so that would be in his V-Trigger too, so that would be in line with his. But I think that on hit, she should be able to get a little bit more damage off of that if she's in V-Trigger 2. So those changes, just adding one or two more uses, expanding the juggle count, and maybe allowing her to combo or get one more hit after her EX reversal, would help put this V-Trigger, like, justify using this V-Trigger with all of its drawbacks, such as the fact that it can only be used when you're low on health, and then once you get it and are already low on health, you have to land a hit before you can activate, otherwise you're just going to die. So, I think that to justify all those severe drawbacks, those strengths should be implemented. And that's pretty much it. Those are my thoughts on possible changes for Falke. I don't think all of them need to be implemented. The ones I mentioned near the start of the video are the ones that I feel should be implemented. All the rest of the stuff is just optional buffs and things like that, and ways to change the character to make certain moves more useful, have an actual purpose, or just improve the character if the necessary buffs that I mentioned aren't enough to make her, you know, strong enough to be considered that she doesn't need more buffs. So if she still needs more buffs, some of the other stuff that I mentioned should be considered as well. Anyways, thanks for listening. Weigh in the comments on what changes you think should be implemented and why. Anyways, yeah. Talk to you guys later.
I'm ready to start.